to the ground at the window and over the garden, nobody knows where. The king made known to all his kingdom that whoever would heal her of this dreadful disease should be richly rewarded, and tried, but the princess got no relief. And the old soldier dressed himself up very sprucely as a doctor, who said he could cure her. So he chopped up some of the apple, and to punish her a little more, gave her a dose, saying he would call tomorrow and see her again. Morrow came, and of course, instead of being better, the nose had been growing fast all night, and the poor princess was dreadful fright. So the doctor chopped up a very little of the pear and gave her, and said he was sure that would do good, and he would call again the next day. Next day came, and the nose was, to be sure, a little smaller, but yet it was bigger than it was when the doctor first began to meddle. Then he thought to himself, I must frighten this cunning princess a little more before I shall get what I want from her. So he gave her another dose of the apple and said he would call on the morrow. The morrow came, and the nose was 10 times as bad as before. My good lady, said the doctor, something works against my medicine, and is too strong for it. But I know by the force of my art what it is. You have stolen goods about you, I am sure, and if you do not give them back, I can do nothing for you. But the princess denied it very stoutly that she had anything of the kind. Very well, said the doctor. You may do as you please, but I am sure I am right, and you will die if you do not own it. Then he went to the king and told him how the matter stood. Daughter, said he, send back the cloak, the purse, and the horn that you stole from the right owners. Then she ordered her maid to fetch all three, and gave them to the doctor, and begged him to give them back the soldiers. And at the moment he had them safe, he gave her a whole pear to eat, and the nose came right. And as for the doctor, he put on his cloak, wished the king and all his court a good day, and was soon with his 2 brothers, who lived from that time happily at home in their palace, except when they took airings in their coach with the 3 dapple gray horses. The 5 servants. Some time ago there reigned in a country many thousands of miles off an old queen, who was very spiteful and delighted in nothing so much as mischief. She had one daughter who was thought to be the most beautiful princess in the world. But her mother only made use of her as a trap for the unwary, and whenever any suitor who had heard of her beauty came to seek her in marriage, the only answer the old lady gave to each was that he must undertake some very hard task and forfeit his life if he failed. Many, led by the report of the princess's charms, undertook these tasks, but failed in the doing what the queen set them to do. No mercy was ever shown them, but the word was given at once, and off their heads were cut. Now it happened that a prince who lived in a country far off, heard of the great beauty of this young lady, and said to his father, Dear father, let me go and try my luck. No, said the king. If you go, you will surely lose your life." The prince, however, had set his heart so much upon the scheme that when he found his father was against it, he fell very ill and took to his bed for 7 years, and no art could cure him or recover his lost spirits. So when his father saw that if he went on thus he would die, he said to him with a heart full of grief, If it must be so, go and try your luck." At this he rose from his bed, recovered his health and spirits, and went forward on his way, light of heart and full of joy. Spoiled brat. Then on he journeyed over hill and dale, through fair weather and foul, till one day, as he was riding through the wood, he thought he saw from afar a large animal upon the ground, and as he drew near, he found that it was a man lying along upon the grass under the trees. But he looked more like a mountain than a man. He was so fat and jolly. When this big fellow saw the traveler, he arose and said, "If you want anyone to wait upon you, you will do well to take on me into your service." "What should I do with such a fat fellow as you?" "Excuse me," said the prince. "It would be nothing to you if I were 3,000 times as fat," said the man, so that I do but behave myself well." "And is true," answered the prince. "So come with me, and I can put you to some use, or another, I dare say." Then the fat man rose up and followed the prince, and by they saw another man lying on the ground with his ear close to the turf. The prince said, "What are you doing there?" "I am listening," answered the man. "To what?" "To all that is going on in the world, for I can hear everything. I can even hear the grass grow." "Tell me," said the prince, what do you hear is going on at the court of the old queen who has the beautiful daughter?" "I hear," said the listener, "the noise of the sword that is cutting off the head of one of her suitors." "Well," said the prince, "I see I shall be able to make use of you." "Make you of use? Come along with me." They had not gone far before they saw a pair of feet, and then part of the legs of a man stretched out, but they were so long that they could not see the rest of the body till they had passed a good deal further, and at last came to the body, and after going on a while further, to the head. "Bless me," said the prince, "what a long rope you are!" "Oh," answered the tall man, "this is nothing. When I choose to stretch myself to my full length, I am 3 times as high as any mountain you have seen on your travels. I warrant you, I will then willingly do what I can to serve you, if you will let me." "Come along then," said the prince. "I can turn you to account in some way." The prince and his train went on further into the wood, and next saw a man lying by the roadside, basking in the heat of the sun, yet shaking and shivering all over, so that not a limb lay still. "What makes you shiver?" said the king. While the sun is shining so warm." "Alas," answered the man, The warmer it is, the colder I am. The sun only seems to make me like the sharp frost that thrills through all my bones. On the other hand, when others are what you call cold, I begin to be warm, so that I can neither bear the ice for its heat, nor the fire for its cold."
"You are a queer fellow," said the prince. But if you have nothing else to do, come along with me." The next thing they saw was a man standing, stretching his neck and looking around from hill to hill. "What are you looking for so eagerly?" said the prince. I have such sharp eyes," said the man, "that I can see over the fields and hills and dales. In short, all over the world." "Well," said the prince, "come with me if you will, for I want one more to make up my train." Then they all journeyed on and met with no one else till they came to the city where the beautiful princess lived. The prince went straight to the old queen and said, "Here I am, ready to do any task you set me, if you will give me your daughter as a reward when I have done." Excuse me.
"I will set you 3 tasks," said the queen, "and if you get through all, you shall be the husband of my daughter. First, you must bring me a ring which I dropped in the Red Sea."
The prince went home to his friends and said, "The first task is not an easy one. It is to fetch a ring out of the sea. So lay your heads together and say what is to be done." The sharp-sighted one said,
"I will see where it lies,"
and looked down into the sea and cried out, "There! It lies upon the rock at the bottom." "I would fetch it out," said the tall man, "if I could but see it."
"Well,"
cried out the fat one, "I will help you do that," and laid himself down and held his mouth on to the water and drank up the waves till the bottom of the sea was as dry as a meadow. Then the tall man stooped a little and pulled out the ring with his hand. And the prince took it to the old queen, who looked at it and, wondering, said, "It is indeed the right ring. Have you gone through this task well? But now comes the second. Look yonder at meadow before my palace. See, there are 100 fat oxen feeding there. You must eat them all by noon, and beneath in my cellar there are 100 casks of wine. You must drink all up." "May I not invite some guests to share the feast with me?" said the prince.
"Why, yes," said the old woman with a spiteful laugh. "You may ask one of your friends to breakfast with you, but no more."
Then the prince went home and said to the fat man, "You must be my guest today, and for once you shall eat your fill." So the fat man set to work and ate the 100 oxen without leaving a bit, and asked if that was to be all he should have for his breakfast. And he drank the wine out of the cask without leaving a drop, licking even his fingers when he had done. When the meal was ended, the prince went to the old woman and told her the second task was done.
"Your work is not all over, however," muttered the old hag to herself. "I will catch you yet. You shall not keep your head on your shoulders, if I can help it."
This evening,
said she, "I will bring my daughter into your house,
and leave her with you. You shall sit together there, but take care that you do not fall asleep, for I shall come when the clock strikes 12, and if she is not then with you, you are undone.
Oh, thought the prince. It is an easy task to keep such a watch as that. I will take care to keep my eyes open. So he called his servants and told them all that the woman had said.
Who knows, though, said he, but there may be some trick at the bottom of this.
It is as well to be upon our guard and keep watch that the young lady does not get away. When it was night, the old woman brought her daughter to the prince's house, and the tall man twisted himself round about it. The listener put his ear to the ground, and the fat man placed himself before the door, so that no living soul could enter, or exit in this case. And the sharp-eyed one looked out afar and watched. Within sat the princess, without saying a word, but the moon shone bright through the window upon her face, and the prince gazed upon her wonderful beauty. And while he looked upon her with a heart full of joy and love, his eyelids did not droop. But at 11 o'clock, the old woman cast a charm over them, so that they all fell asleep, and the princess vanished in a moment. And thus they slept till 11:45, when the charm had no longer any power over them, and they all awoke.
Alas, alas, woe is me!
Cried the prince, now I am lost forever. And his faithful servants began to weep over their unhappy lot. But the listener said, be still, and I will listen. So he listened a while and cried out, I hear her bewailing her fate. And the sharp-sighted man looked and said, I see her sitting on a rock 300 miles hence. Now help us, my tall friend. You stand up. You will reach her in 2 steps. Very well, answered the tall man, and in an instant, before one could turn one's head round, he was at the foot of the enchanted rock. Then the tall man took the young lady in his arms and carried her back to the prince a moment before it struck 12. And they all sat down again and made merry. And when the clock struck 12, the old queen came sneaking by with a spiteful look, as if she was going to say, now he is mine. Nor could she think otherwise, for she knew that her daughter was but the moment before the rock 300 miles off. But when she came, she came and saw her daughter in the prince's room. She startled and said, there is somebody here who can do more than I can. However, she now saw that she could no longer avoid giving the prince her daughter for a wife, but said to her in a whisper, it is a shame that you should be won by servants and not have a husband of your own choice. Now the young lady was of a very proud, haughty temper, and her anger was raised to such a pitch that the next morning she ordered 300 loads of wood to be brought, and pile up, and told the prince it was true. He had, by the help of his servants, done the 3 tasks, but that before she would marry him, someone must sit upon the pile of wood when it was set on fire and bear the heat. She thought to herself that though his servants had done everything else for him, none of them would go as far as to burn themselves for him, and that then she should put his love to the test by seeing whether he would sit upon it himself. But she was mistaken, for the servants heard this. They said, "We have all done something but the frosting man. Now his turn is come." And they took him and they put him on the wood and set fire to it. Then the fire rose and burned all for 3 long days, till all the wood was gone. And when it was out, the frosty man stood on the mist of the ashes, trembling like an aspen leaf, and said, "I never shivered so much in my life. If I had lasted much longer, I should have lost the use of my limbs." When the princess had no longer any plea for delay, she saw that she was bound to marry the prince. But when they were going to church, the old woman said, "I will never consent," and sent secret orders out to her horsemen to kill and slay all before then, and bring back her daughter before she could be married. However, the listener had pricked up his ears and heard all that the old woman said and told it to the prince. So they made haste and got to the church first and were married. And then the 5 servants took their leaves and went away, saying, "We will go and try our luck in the world on our own account." The prince set out with his wife, and at the end of the first day's journey came to a village where a swineherd was feeding his swine. And as they came near, he said to his wife, "Do you know who I am? I am not a prince, but a poor swineherd. He whom you see yonder with the swine is my father, and our business will be to help him to tend them." Then he went to the swineherd's hut with her and ordered her royal clothes to be taken away in the night, so that when she awoke in the morning she had nothing to put on, till the woman who lived there made a great favor of giving her an old gown and a pair of worsted stockings. If it were not for your husband's sake," said she, "I would not have given you anything." Then the poor princess gave herself up for lost, and believed that her husband must indeed be a swineherd. But she thought she would make the best of it, and began to help him to feed them, and said, "This is just reward for my pride." When this had lasted 8 days, she could bear it no longer, for her feet were all over wounds, and she sat down and wept by the wayside. Some people came up to her and pitied her, and asked if she knew what her husband really was. "Yes," said she, "a swineherd. He is just gone out to the market with some of his stock." But they said, "Come along and we will take you to him." And they took her over the hill to the palace of the prince's father. And when they came into the hall, there stood her husband, so richly dressed in his royal clothes that she did not know him till he fell upon her neck and kissed her and said, I have borne much for your sake, and you too have also borne a great deal for me. Then the guests were sent forth, and the marriage feast was given, and all made merry and danced and sang. And the best wish that I can wish is that you and I had been there too. Let's turn this down a little because that's a little loud. And this next one is a real one. If it's the one I'm thinking of, this is a real one. A little more. You guys won't want to miss a word of this. Cat skin. There once was a king whose queen had hair of the purest gold, and was so beautiful that her match was not to be met with on the whole face of the earth. But this beautiful queen fell ill, and when she felt that her end drew near, she called the king to her and said, Vow to me that you will never marry again unless you meet with a wife who is as beautiful as I am, and who has golden hair like mine. Then when the king, in his grief, had vowed all she asked, she shut her eyes and died. But the king was not to be comforted, and for a long time never thought of taking another wife. At last, however, his counselor said, This will not do. The king must marry again, that we may have a queen. So messengers were sent far and wide to seek for a bride who was as beautiful as the late queen. But there was no princess in the world so beautiful. There we go. And if there had been, still there was not one to be found who had such golden hair. So the messengers came home and had done all their work for nothing. The end. Not. Now, the king had a daughter who was just as beautiful as her mother and had the same golden hair. And when she was grown up, the king looked at her and saw that she was just like his late queen. Then he said to his courtiers, May I not marry my daughter? She is the very image of my dead wife. Unless I have her, I shall not find any bride upon the whole earth. And you say there must be a queen. Then when the courtiers heard this, they were shocked and said, Heaven forbid that a father should marry his daughter. Out of so great a sin, no good can come from. And his daughter was also shocked, but hoped the king would soon give up such thoughts. So she said to him, Before I marry anyone, I must have 3 dresses. One must be of gold like the sun, another must be shining silver like the moon, and the third must be dazzling as the stars. Besides this, I want a mantle of 1,000 different kinds of fur put together, to which every beast in the kingdom must give